We're back with the Watchman's Cry. This is the second lesson in a six-part series. We discussed the days of Elijah and the message that he or his spirit sent through John the Baptist and in the future prior to the return of Jesus Christ, which is, I believe, a message for today, which is repent and before the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And now we need to know about this delusion spoken of in Second Thessalonians. I will read it. This is the New King James Version. The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and with all unrighteous deception among those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this reason, God will send a strong delusion that they should believe that lie, that they all may be condemned who did not believe the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. So we're going to break that down. What and by whom? It's according to the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and with all unrighteous deception. Power of the heavenly realm, possessed by Satan and his fallen angels, and signs can come in many different forms. Lying wonders can come in many different ways. I believe that a lot of that has to do, at least for right now, I think there'll be multiple delusions. Right now, we get a lot of our delusions, though, through movies, TV, music, and things like that, news, in which people just constantly throw lies and mis not it's got a piece of the truth, but it's not the whole truth, so it's enough to deceive people, and people will believe it. A really blatant off the wall lie, most people aren't going to grab, but there's so many just deceptions out there. I think that may be part of it, and it's with unrighteous deception. It's willingly and knowingly perpetuating lies. And why? Well, because they have not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And notice that salvation and truth are associated with one another. Who sends that delusion and why? Once again, well, believe it or not, God sends the delusion, and it's that they should believe the lie, that they all may be condemned who did not believe the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. So these do not have the love of the truth, and we're talking about condemnation. So we're seeing an association between condemnation and not loving the truth, salvation and loving the truth. So what is truth? It's a good question. Jesus is the truth. Let's go to the Old Testament and bring up a verse related to a delusion and things that are lies are not truthful. So woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Woe unto them that are wise in their own eyes and prudent in their own sight. So they think they got it all together. They think they have it figured out, but maybe not exactly. So let's just look at a big picture here of the moral decline, and I'm from the US, so it's easy for me to relate to the United States and things that I've seen over my lifetime, as well as um, changes that have occurred just based on my parents and grandparents and knowledge that I've gotten from them and others. So let's just look at something like schools. We start off with um, teaching school based on the Bible. That was the primary book read, that and the New England Primer, which was all about morals and the proper way to do things. So everything was morally based, and now not so much. In fact, they've taken prayer out of school. and they teach a lot of things that are not just not factual, but blatant lies. Darwinian's theory of evolution. And he was an atheist, and of course, he's looking for a way to explain things without creation. And he made an attempt. It failed miserably to anyone that has any logical processing ability. But most people, or a lot of people, tend to still just believe a lie that's blatant. If they would just look into it a little bit, they would see it takes a whole lot more faith to believe that lie than it does to believe in a creator. Just history is manipulated in so many ways, and so many things are taught to children that shouldn't be morally. And and it's sad that parents don't have that much control, or influence over their children's lives when they're around other teachers and school children a lot more than they are their parents. Who's going to win out? Probably the louder, more repetitive voice is going to win out in most cases. Sin. Obviously, you just look at what is acceptable now versus 20 years ago versus 40 years ago versus 60 years ago. Sin has become more rampant, more acceptable, and and oftentimes we don't even speak out against a lot of sins anymore. That's just the way things are, and that's not okay because the Bible hasn't changed, and God's views of right and wrong, morals have not changed. People have just progressively and slowly believed in this lie that it's okay to do this and that, whatever sins we want to look at. Um, Roles such as the role of a man and a woman within the family, within a church, within society. The men have been demasculinized, where women are treated as if they are more manly in certain ways, with strength and fearlessness and all this. And it's just not true. There's a few, but by and large, men and women are still have the tendencies that God gave them, and um, we have different roles. Women should not be fighting. Did God call women to fight in the Jewish army, the Israelites, when they were in the Exodus? No, he called men of fighting age to form an army and go fight. And he said, I'll lead you and you'll win. You follow me and we'll continue to win. You do what I say. If you don't do what I say, you'll lose. But it's not the woman's job to fight for the man, uh, for the most part. Pornography in the United States, we created a tremendous amount of pornography and shipped it out throughout the rest of the world. And um, it's become more rampant and more accessible to where anyone can have access to it, and it makes it just such a more difficult sin to deal with than 30 years ago, when you literally had to go buy something, or work fairly hard to access something like that. It just wouldn't, you know it's acceptable, therefore it wasn't a significant problem like it is now. Government. We've changed. We've lost a lot of strength from the state governments, and shifted more towards the federal governments. Federal governments becoming larger, having more control, suppressing ideals of the states, which is not the way that we designed our government in the United States to be. Our Constitution has been trampled upon, and we've lost a tremendous amount of rights. We still have some, but we have very few left, and I think those lingering few rights that we do have left will likely go away in the near future, because so many of them already have. The freedom to peaceably assemble was one of the latter ones that just totally went away, which no one has the right to prevent us from. But just because a disease is out there, they were saying you can't go to church, you can't go to public gatherings, in some places you couldn't even be outside. Um, where we've gotten to a place that we've never been to before, and it's where it's dangerously close uh, to communism. We're moving that way. Material things, just think about the typical family had a car, had a house of whatever square footage. Now the houses on average are much larger, um, multiple cars, newer cars, more things. Social media, people are posting, look at me all the time. Look what I did. Look what how good I am at being a husband, a wife, a father, a mother, a son, a teacher, an employee, a bass fisherman, hunter, whatever. Look at the new toys I purchased, etc. Me, me, me. Look at all this cool stuff, all these material things. Let's post it. Let's share it. Let's be envious of each other's stuff and see who can get the most cool things and everything else. Again, that's one of the Ten Commandments as far as the coveting other people's things that we've, I think, is somewhat of a moral decline. We're not satisfied with um, just enough. There's never enough in the United States in some ways, and for some people, of course, not everyone, but there has been a trend towards more people just desiring so many more things. So what is a delusion? Something that is believed to be true or real, but that is actually false or unreal. It implies an inability to distinguish between what is real and what only seems to be real, often as the result of a disordered state of mind. I'll pull that straight from the dictionary. We're drowning in information but starved for our knowledge. We've got more information at the tip of our fingertips on our phone, our computers, or whatever electronic media we have access to than you know a huge library 30 years ago, and we can access that information so much faster. We have so many media outlets and ways to just access so much, um, but a lot of it, especially when it comes to mainstream media and um, whether that's news or TV, movies, music, whatever, there's so much of it that is controlled, manipulated to send a specific message, and those messages are typically lies. They are a delusion. If you listen to and believe those messages, you're falling for a delusion. So you need to unplug from all that. Find Christian based messages and listen to those and test even those with the Word of God and through the Holy Spirit to just to confirm that you're getting the right types of information that's edifying to you, that enhances your knowledge and understanding in truth. And I encourage you throughout this presentation to seek truth in all types of things, because we're exposed to so many lies that it truly affects our ability to understand what's going on around us. Without that understanding, we're going to fall for the schemes of the devil. We need to know our enemy. We need to know what he is up to and his minions, and how to combat that. So that's what we're going to discuss through this two-part lesson. And a lot of people are not going to agree with it and they're not going to like it, but it doesn't change the fact that what I'm saying is actual truth versus what you may hear over and over. Just because it's repeated more often and by more people does not make it more factual. Keep that in mind. Seek the truth. So, how did we get to this point within the moral decline of our nation and the world? From John Stuart Mill. In 1867, he gave an address at the University of St. Andrews, and he stated, and you'll recognize this quote, "Let not anyone pacify his conscience by the delusion that he can do no harm if he takes no part and forms no opinion. Bad men need nothing more to compass their ends than that good men should look on and do nothing. He is not a good man who, without a protest, allows wrong to be committed in his name and with the means which he helps to supply, because he will not trouble himself to use his mind on the subject." That's saying virtually everything I want to say in this entire presentation, but you need to know how to apply it. So we're going to have to go through this whole thing anyway. So he's talking about delusion, talking about bad men are going to get what they desire if good men don't do anything. And we're so far beyond the point at which we should have done certain things and protest and said, no, we will not accept that and stop some evil in this world. And we haven't. Um, you should be able to probably just run through a list in your mind right now of things that are dear to your heart that you can't stand, that are bad, evil, and you're like, man, why didn't we stop that? Shame on my parents is what I say. Their generation should have stopped a lot of things. Um, they're and my generation even more. We've let so many evil things come to pass that I truly think at this point a revolution, physical fighting is not going to do anything. We're just too far gone. We wouldn't even know what to reset back to. I think as individuals and groups and small communities, families, we can turn back to the Lord and find that place of refuge within God's protection. But the odds of changing our country significantly, I truly think, are extremely, extremely low. I don't think that we should not try. Yes, absolutely, we should try. We should pray. We should seek the Lord's guidance and ask for His, um, the Spirit to come upon enough people to make true changes for the better. But I just don't think that's the way that we're headed, and the way that the Bible portrays that the end is going to go. In fact, Colossians 2:8 says, be careful that no one takes you captive through philosophy and empty deceit based on human tradition and on the elemental forces of the world and not based on Christ. So everything we look at, we want to look at through the lens of Scripture, through the lens of what is righteous in God's eyes and not the world's. So George Orwell was a prophet because he wrote a lot of things that are very true to this day. Big Brother is watching. Look at this eye. Power is in tearing human minds to pieces and putting them together again in new shapes of your own choosing. That is exactly what the media and things that we watch and listen to are doing, without a doubt. Those who control the past control the future, and who controls the present controls the past. So if you were in control in the past, you're gonna form government and philosophy and culture to persuade the future, and you can also take things out of the history books that you don't want to be in there and manipulate the history and events to make you and your side look better from the past looking forward. Threats to freedom of speech, writing, and action, though often trivial in isolation, are cumulative in their effect, and, unless checked, lead to a general disrespect for the rights of the citizens. And we have so many threats to the freedom of our speech, our writing, and our action. It's one-sided. If you're going to say anything against certain people or groups, you will be completely shunned, and your voice will not get out. And that's typically the truthful voice. If it wasn't truthful, it wouldn't be that voice would not be stopped. So the further society drifts from truth, the more it will hate those who speak it. People will believe what the media tells them they believe. If the message is repeated often enough, whether it's true or not, it becomes factual in the minds of many people. We have to weigh that against everything else that we're seeing, hearing, and observing to determine if it's really factual or not. It takes a concerted effort to do so. It's not okay to just stick our heads in the sand and not pay attention to what's going on around us. A lot of people, I feel like, in the recent history have been burned by believing the lies told. And a lot of people have actually potentially lost their lives because of some of the negative effects of various things. warning. But the Spirit explicitly says that in latter times some will fall from the faith and pay attention to deceitful spirits and demonic doctrines in 1 Timothy 4:1. To fall from the faith means you had faith at some point. So when these strong delusions come and tempt and tickle the ears of people, some will, who are in and of the faith, will turn from it. Not to say they can't come back, but they will turn from the faith and pay attention to those deceitful spirits and demonic doctrines. So the delusion is not simply a physical thing, it's a spiritual and demonic presence that we must fight.
We've been told that America is a Christian country from its origin, one nation under God. We've been taught that our government is for the people, by the people. But what if it's all been just a grand deception? What if the God, worshipped in secret by government leaders in our nation's capital, is in fact our enemy? And many of our leaders have been venerating him secretly through arcane rituals, setting the scene for the incarnation of this ancient entity.
That was just the intro to a video series called The Belly of the Beast, and it's a good video to watch to help you understand how the satanic side have worked their agenda in the United States over the last couple hundred years plus. So you've had a lot of good guys trying to make a God-fearing nation within the confines of biblical law, and then you've had the opposite working on the other end of the spectrum to create this one world government, and the seat of which, or greatest control of which, is here in the United States. I mean, that's why we have the UN here. We have the World Trade Center and the beginning of the Federal Reserve banking system and all these other things that have worldwide control and implications. So let's talk about these globalists' new world order, what they're looking for. There's so many ways to classify them or call things that they can be called. I'm just going to call it globalists because we're looking at a global society, right? They want a one world government. They want a one world religion. And they want a one world monetary system. And when we create this one world system in which they have worldwide control, and we know this has to happen because if all take the mark of the beast and no one can eat or drink, or buy or sell without the mark of the beast, and they have the authority to implement that worldwide, no one, that means it has to be a worldwide system, right? And so we know that that's in an effort to usher in the Antichrist and then ultimately kill the Christians. They want to control the world, and what they do is they pull the purse strings, right? We talked about the Federal Reserve. We talked about the and international banking systems. They cause wars, devise enemies and threats, whether real or not. They control the media, absolutely, except for alternatives, and they want to rule overtly, and someday they will. I think they're very close to that now. And then we have this little clip again from End Times for Reductions, a clip that most people have probably seen. Has been around the internet on multiple channels, YouTube channels and things for years and years. Well, I'm just going to play a short clip of a much larger interview for you.
What do they mean by it?
Ideological subversion is the slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate 1 generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years. Actually, it's overfulfilled because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes his balls, then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization. The next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby, doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation, what matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. And you can see it quite clearly that in some areas, in such sensitive areas as defense and economy, the influence of Marxist-Leninist ideas in the United States is absolutely fantastic. I could never believe it 14 years ago when I landed in this part of the world that the process will go that fast. The next stage, of course, is crisis. It may take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely. Normalization is a cynical expression borrowed from Soviet propaganda. When the Soviet tanks moved into Czechoslovakia in '68, Comrade Brezhnev said, "Now the situation in brotherly Czechoslovakia is normalized." This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to bring the country to crisis, to promise people all kind of goodies and the paradise on earth, to destabilize your economy, to eliminate the principle of free market competition, and to put a big brother government in Washington, D.C., with benevolent dictators like Walter Mondale, who will promise lots of things, never mind whether the promises are fulfillable or not. Your leftists in the United States, all these professors and all these beautiful civil rights defenders, they are instrumental in the process of the subversion only to destabilize the nation. When their job is completed, they are not needed anymore. They know too much. Some of them, when they get disillusioned, when they see that Marxist-Leninists come to power,